Alec, why don't we start with you? You've probably been asked an awful lot, but Greek bouzouki, how did you come by that first?
I got it as a present. I found out that I got interested in lutes and bow-backed sort of instruments, particularly lutes. And I heard a friend of mine was going to Greece a long, long time ago when people didn't go to Greece. It wasn't a holiday place, But a friend of mine was going from Dublin, and I asked him to get me a thing called a lauto, which is a large lute-like instrument made in that they play in Crete. And it looks like a sort of medieval lute. I thought it'd be nice to have, sort of hang on the wall. And he brought me back a bouzouki instead by mistake, which he bought in the Plaka in Athens, and it was third hand. It was pretty banjaxed, but it was in that DAD tuning. It was a trichord. What do you call it?
Tricordal.
Tricordal, modally sort of tuned, and he brought me this back by mistake. It cost £3, and I started playing that around little bit around Dublin. Then when I moved down to the west of Ireland to Spiddle, I started playing in sessions in the local pub.
And I think I remember, was it Johnny Moynihan played Greek bouzouki as well? Was that about the same time, bit before, bit after? Do you remember?
The first time I saw one, an English singer called Anne Briggs, who was a very popular English singer at the time, and now lives in Scotland, I believe, one of the islands somewhere. Okay, but she was herself and Johnny were doing a line, and she brought over a Greek, which she bought somewhere in a junk shop in England, a Greek bouzouki. So she was messing around with that. She was the first person I saw messing around with the bouzouki, But before that, Andy Irvine was playing mandolins and Gibson mandolins, this type of thing. And he was really the first person I ever heard that was took trouble to do backings for songs and tunes. You know, instead of just flaking the chords out, or as they say with the Irish piano players at the time, had a disinterested left hand. In other words, they'd be playing the tune with that hand, but that hand would just be doing anything, you know, on the bass, and they'd be flying all over the place with it. So the only thing that was used in after the piano lost popularity doing that, people started playing the guitar behind Irish traditional music, and still do, and not taking any trouble to find out, you know, you didn't have to know the tunes, like the Byrne type thing, you just banged away, like, you know, then, but I've heard Andy Irvine doing a lot of that, counter melodies and interesting chordal things behind Jigs and Wheels, and songs with a group called Swedish Men, you know. That's what really got me interested in playing traditional music. I used to play a bit of country blues on the guitar, but when I moved to Spiddle, there wasn't much demand for it, you know. I mean, you couldn't find anyone else to play with, really.
Yeah. What about the tuning? You mentioned that the Greek bouzouki had DAD, so a modal kind of tuning. Did that suit Irish tunes better than the standard guitar tuning?
Well, I found that it did. It's a bit restrictive on playing lots of complicated melody lines if they're stretching between the scales, you know. But it's much sweeter than I find than if it's tuned the way like a banjo is or a fiddle is, you know. I find it much sweeter. But yeah, the Greeks don't. The original Greek bouzouki is that trichordal thing, not the 4-string one. From what I heard, was brought in for the people in Athens who played all that Theodorakis stuff, you know, in Greek music, Nana Mouskouri and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
They brought in the 4th string to give them more scope. But the 3-string players don't like that at all. They're mostly in Thessalonica. They play the rebetiko, like Turkish Greek music, and they don't regard the 4-string bouzouki as a bouzouki. You know, it's like the snob. It's not very snobby, you know.
Yeah.
So there's a few people. I don't know how many people. A good few people in Greece would play the 3-course bouzouki, but it's all rebetiko music. It's not used for the, you know, the plonka 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 they do in Athens, that type of thing, you know.
What about Irish bouzouki in terms of, you know, flatter back or flat back and maybe 4 courses? Were you ever tempted to?
Not for a minute.
Never.
No, I don't particularly like them.
How would you describe the difference in maybe playing and the difference in tone? Or?
Well, they sound to me like guitars. You know, as opposed to bouzouki. The old Greek bouzouki's got that sort of nasal sort of twang about them, which is why they go to the trouble of building that round back instead of just a couple of pieces of flat wood. You know, they wouldn't bother their asses if you know if you get that sound without doing that. But on the other hand, having said that, some of the flat back mandolins are nicer than the Italian round back mandolins. You know, aren't they?
Yeah.
But not in the case of the bouzouki, in my opinion. Which is completely bigoted, of course, you know.
Well, maybe this is a good point to ask Kevin the same kind of question. I think you played, was it fiddle or violin maybe, when you were
Yeah, I
younger?
mean, when I was young, I did the sort of typical schoolboy route through, you know, violin aged 4 right the way through 16, and just went through the process of learning classical music, you know, and my teacher he'd effectively, he spotted a quite a good ear for sound, you know, and he was training me really to get into orchestral sort of work. So I wasn't very good at learning all about the structure of music. I could never really get a handle on that. And when I was about 15, 16, I was just drifting away from playing music. I was getting tired of it, and I changed teacher, and he introduced me to Kerr's Merry Melodies, and I started finding all these tunes that I actually knew from the barn dances around Angus and the music that we were learning Scottish country dance to at school, and it was the first time I actually put 2 and 2 together, you know, actually being able to play the music I was hearing, you know, at home and in the farms and round about Angus. At that stage too, I had an uncle, a family relative called Alistair Taylor, and he gave me a box of records. He was a real Scots language fan and a real devotee of the Scottish tradition, and he could sense I was, sort of fading away from that teenage sort of stage, and he gave me a box of records one summer to have a listen to, and it had first Didanan record, the first Clangsty record, Spellemany Hoidlum from the Faroes, Jeannie Redpath, and a whole load of stuff of that Battlefield Band and Boys of Loch, and really early, the early sort of stages of that music surfacing. And I was just astonished at the sounds, particularly the Clangsty, and then Didanan when I heard them later. And I that was at that point I what is that sound, and I rummaged and worked out that it was the mandolin was Andy Irwin was using. And I went to the library in Dundee and I got the Encyclopedia Britannica out and I looked up mandolin, and there was a little picture of it and it described the string intervals and all the rest of it, and then I realised that it was the same as the violin. So I hunted one down. I actually got one from a school friend, Ruth Dorward, who is married to Ian Fraser, the fiddle player, who you probably know well. Ruth's brother, Pip, had suffered from cystic fibrosis, and he died quite young in his teens, but through his sort of teenage years he played a mandolin for something he could exercise and do it, and I was given that mandolin, and it was a real kind of touchstone for many years, that instrument, and I eventually passed it back to Ruth and Ian for their family, for their kids to have it back,
Was it an Italian one?
Yeah, I mean, I bought it for 15 quid, and it was, I mean, you could have cut cheese with it, it was that kind of horrendous, I don't know how I played it, to be honest, but I threw myself at it, and I taught myself the right hand, and I went off to university in Aberdeen, and met one or two other people who did that sort of stuff and were interested in it. Andrew Barber, Freeland's brother, particularly. And I came staggering back from the Union one night on a Friday night, and I turned my radio on when I got in, and it was John Peel playing a session in 1978, and the session was Didanan, and I'd never heard them before, the record, there wasn't actually a record in that box, but it was the first time I'd heard that sound, and I just was totally astonished. And I listened to, there was no listen again or anything, it was just like, what is that? And John Peel said, it's Didanan, in the session here. And I got a record, and I sent to Celtic Music to Dave Bulmer's label, asked for a Didanan record. Package arrived, and I opened it up, and it wasn't Didanan, but it was the Shanachie record with Frankie Gavin and Alec Finn, the duet album. And that's when I really heard the bouzouki, and for the first time, and that was what fascinated me. That sound, that in particular Alec's way of playing it. So I then sort of started to hunt down and explore, the bouzouki world. But equally, I wanted to play Scottish dance music, so I was I swapped bought the whiskey for a banjo with a butcher friend of mine in Kennedy's, the butchers. Alan Kennedy had a banjo. He couldn't play it, but he had the money to buy it. So I started playing the banjo then and trying it in the dance band stuff. So that was, I suppose, my early influences in a broad sense.
Mm-hmm. So when you got your first mandolin, were you really transplanting all the fiddle tunes that you'd picked up?
Yeah.
Directly onto mandolin, mostly Scottish material.
Yeah, and also having a shot at playing the sort of tunes that you were hearing on the string instruments that the Battlefield Band were playing a bit of, and the Planksty sets that were done, and then when I heard the Didanan records, just the top line fiddle, which is amazing, music. Mm-hmm. And just trying to learn how to play that sort of stuff, but I never had a chordal background because I come from the violin, so most of virtually all my music is melodic and linear as opposed to chordal and across the strings, so I've got a big sort of gap in my playing ability there, but I sort of make up for it with little techniques that help in the dance band playing.
Uh-huh.
So, but then I eventually got a decent mandolin, and that opened up the doors. Having a decent instrument really opens up the doors to your playing.
Yeah.
You're not held back by the limitations of the instrument.
Mm-hmm. So by this point in the mid to late 70s, were you playing with other people as well?
We used to go down to the docks in Aberdeen, and just to get free drink,
Mhm.
because all the Norwegian riggers were coming off. The oil boats were coming in. It was absolute boom time then. It was Klondike time. So we used to go down, and Andrew Barber with his whistle, and you'd either get welcomed royally and free drinks the rest of the night, which is great as a student, or else you get told to leave
Yeah.
pronto, and go and try another peeps or the Fitty bar or somewhere. So we always had great fun playing darts, and there would always be some old accordion player somewhere, some old fella who would squeeze away and completely paralytic, feels.
And were there many other Scottish mandolin players around at the time?
Oh no. I mean, the only guy I can remember clearly was Jed Foley. He was the first person I remember seeing who got really nice and could play it really well. And then I met Dagger Gordon. Dagger was one of the earlier exponents and playing Scottish stuff. But there are very few. I mean, the other guy was Nigel Jelks. Nigel.
Yeah.
He big interest in the Irish tradition really. So. But there really weren't many. There weren't that many fiddle players. I mean, it was everything was pretty thin on the ground.
Yeah. How often have you been over to Scotland, you say?
Not that often. Not that often. We used to come and do gigs here at one point,
Uh-huh.
the band did, but not for a good long time now. The last time I was over was with Kathleen Lochnan. We do a couple of things on Bouzouki and harp, a lot of O'Carroll and stuff, and
Oh, yeah.
Sowares and that. I came and did that the last time. I think that was the last time.
Yeah.
And then I usually, then I might just come and just stay with Kevin a few days and go to Sandy Bell's to play a couple,
Uh-huh.
play a couple of Scottish tunes.
Yeah. It'd be good to ask you about that actually after what your impression is of Scottish tunes compared to Irish. Well, maybe touch on that
Oh yeah, I
a
love them.
bit.
We go around all the charity shops, junk shops, and look for bits and pieces.
Well,
The last time we were here, Kevin, have you seen that crazy turtle guitar we found?
No,
I'll show you before you go.
I'll have to ask you about that again.
I'll show you that. Look at it. Found this in a junk shop in Edinburgh, which is closed.
It's not the one in Ewington, is it?
Oh, the Charity Express one, yeah. So when you were kind of starting to play, when you were young, around
Yeah.
Irish, what was the kind of musical surroundings, I suppose? What were you
Well,
supposed
the home was Ochterhouse.
Yeah.
My parents moved out there in 1967. They built a house out there because my mother wanted to ski and get close to Glen Shee, and she was still skiing aged 80 4 years ago
Wow.
in the Alps. So she was pretty intrepid. So they got a plot of land and they built a house, and we got it on one of the local farmers. When you left Dundee, it was like crossing an ocean, because you went from this really degraded, grimy jute city into really old-fashioned Scottish rural countryside,
Yeah.
and it was still a countryside that was effectively, almost pre-war in the integrity of the farming landscape. The farming population were really rural people, and it's virtually gone now. It's really changed, hugely changed. But everywhere you went, there was a social connection. There was barn dances on most weekends in the winter. Some farm would have a barn dance. You just clear the barn, get the bales out, get an local band in, and all the old guys, the tractor men, the ploughmen, all those fellas, they all worshipped Jimmy Shand, who lived obviously in Dundee in the 50s. And Shand was the man, and he played in all the wee halls. He played all right, all the little venues. I worked with an old Grieve on West Mains, and he said that in Fife, where his first job was, he said there was a dance, every weekend there was a dance in a different hall with a top band, Jim Cameron or Shand or Powrie, all these guys, and it was saturated in that sort of tradition, and it was just sort of there, and we were taught the dancing at school. And we went because it was great when you were 15, 16, 17. It was you could actually make contact with the opposite sex and try holding them and doing all that sort of thing, exploring growing up, and it was great fun. But the box players were everywhere, you know, and a lot of them were button box players. Most of them were button box players.
Interesting.
Jim Brown of the Foundry Band he's one of the the last sort of exponents, and it was very low key too. You know, it was very relaxed and just it wasn't pushed or. It's just what the old guys, the old folk kind of did, and they were all great dancers, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, when I was about 17, 18, I met Jim Brown. He was playing in a session in a pub called the Junction in Meagle, probably remember. And they were great sessions, really good. They were really old Scottish, totally Scottish tune repertoire. All the marches, and it was the dance band repertoire they played, you know. And that's where I met Don Michie, the Jim Cameron's trumpet player. He came out of the woodwork one night he got a new set of false teeth, and he was 84 or something, and he was a very wee dapper guy, and he hadn't been able to play his cornet for years, and anyway he got these new teeth, and he found he could actually play his cornet, as opposed to his teeth falling out, and every time he blew, and Jim said, "Oh, come and have a tune with us," and he came out and he started, doing what he'd done in the 50s with Jim Cameron, and that was an extraordinary sound. And I was sitting there with a banjo, trying to play my own music on this alien instrument in Scottish music, because I wasn't really good I couldn't really do it on the fiddle either. I wasn't very good on the fiddle. Todd Mickey actually encouraging me to, keep going, because he'd done a similar thing with an alien instrument and, got it accepted, so. But it was an interesting time to grow up in Angus,
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of much song tradition though. I didn't come into contact with that, but I was maybe just in the wrong place.
What about your own musical background, Alec, in terms of growing up? What kind of music were you surrounded by?
Lonnie Donegan would be the first type of thing. Like Van Morrison recently made an album with Lonnie Donegan before Lonnie departed this world. But skiffle. When I was about 8 or 7 or 8, Lonnie Donegan came around. You had the old tea chest. Do you ever know anything about that?
Yeah.
You used to have a tea chest as a bass with a broom pole and a string on it. Somebody would strum on a guitar, and maybe somebody on a mouth organ, and they would do what would you call it? American country, I suppose, in a way, like very obscure things, like with that. And then my father bought me a ukulele, a very cheap little ukulele, a cream colour with a red palm tree on the front of it, but they're tuned in a certain way, like bing bong bong bong. And there were chord books. You've got a little chord book with it, and there were literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of chords just for this little 4-string thing, and you've got the words like to Red River Valley and the little boxes with the dots underneath it. So you could actually, a kid could you could do that, and even sometime like 3 chords for one word.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There'd be 3 dum 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 for one word sort of thing. And that's how I really enjoyed doing that. And my mother used to play Irish stuff on the piano, Macleod, like Joseph Locke songs, and
Because she was from Connemara.
no, she was from near Castle, Roscommon, Galway border.
Right.
But my grandmother was from there as well. My grandmother had the old massive old gramophone with all the Cayley records, plus all the Joseph Locks, the sort of Smalksy stuff as well.
Delia Murphy making an appearance. So.
No, she didn't. It was mainly like the Joseph Locke type, more operatic stuff. I can't remember, to be honest, but I don't think so. Then I was joined a skiffle group, strumming on a guitar, and then I got into country blues. I was very impressed with Lightning Hopkins and Solitary Brown and McGee and everything. So I started learning those couple of tunes, just actually picking on the guitar, actually playing the tune on the guitar.
Where did you hear them then? How come
on records, because the same place as Mick Jagger, it was the same period, but they all went, all the art students, this type of thing, it was jazz at first.
Mm-hmm.
you know, Acapulco and those jazz bands, Kenny Ball, they were big, and then that gradually changed. There were record shops set up that had weird records. They were mainly brought in from America. And there's a big following. There's an art college in Yorkshire. There was a big following of country blues in that. You know, before Bill Haley was somewhere in there as well. You know, but the old country blues singers. And they used to do these tours of England. They come over like an ensemble, a blues tour, like, you know, which is where I saw Solitary Brownie McGee and met him, you know.
What age were you?
I haven't a clue.
Well, you were art college, so what were you, 18?
Yeah, 18, 19.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what, I mean, they must have been old guys at that time, surely.
They're not as old as you thought.
Right.
And because I actually met Solitary Brownie McGee in Winnipeg in Canada. We were on the same bill as us on this festival. And we were drinking with them, or drinking with Brownie anyway, in a bar there, you know. I was telling him all about this sort of thing, you know.
Yeah.
And they were still doing a bit of it. They hated each other at this stage. They'd done some everything had gone wrong financially. Either Brownie probably ripped off Sonny or Sonny ripped off Brownie. So if you booked them, you had to book 2 different hotels. They weren't allowed to see each other till they got onto the stage. But they couldn't afford to give up financially, you see, the truth. So they used to go on the stage, hi Sonny, hi Brownie, and blah blah blah, have a lovely chat and sing songs. And then once they got off the stage, 2 different hotels, bastards, you know, and all this sort of thing.
What was that story you had about Ringo when you met him?
Oh yeah, Brownie was doing what we call in Ireland the bail box, and they did poor mouth. You know, he said we used to live in this little hut in galvanised shack in Alabama or somewhere. Daddy used to come back from the asbestos mine, covered in white dust. It was the opposite to the mining thing, you know, where the miner comes back. And he said, we used to put out this tin bathtub in the middle of the kitchen, you know, to wash this white dust off him by the light of a single light bulb. And Ringo said, "You had electricity?" And it was one of those conversations, you know, because they actually didn't in Chantal or in Galway at that time. You know, they didn't. Yeah. So Ringo said, he said, I remember the first time when they turned on the electricity in the Chantala, his mother sent him next door to borrow a cup of sugar, you know, for the tea. And they just turned on this, they did electricity. I said, walking in the house, and there was an 80-year-old man, bullocks naked, trying to light his pipe off the light bulb. So that sort of finished Brownie, you know, they were doing that, you know, thing where I'll tell you a worse story than Ringo won on the light bulb.
But tell me, you going back to the loot though thing. Where did you hear that then? I mean, that's an unusual thing even at that stage to have shown an interest in. And you know, was that an art college thing? Did you see a gig or?
Yeah, I had an art teacher at art college who played classical guitar, which I'd never really heard. He turned me on to it, you know. And then I bought a thing called a Lacotte guitar, which is a French lady's guitar, very wasted like that, in a junk shop for $5. Somewhere in Yorkshire, and that's a gut stringed thing, you know. So but I could never do the classical, much as I'd love to have done it. I wasn't able for that.
But you've always liked the instruments too, you?
Oh yeah, love them. Yeah.
You've got a castle full of all sorts of.
Yeah, well, nearly as much as you. The ukulele was very, very important. The chord, because you never imagined there could be so many chords.
Yeah.
Far more than on a normal guitar, you know.
Was it a bit of a trend at that time that ukuleles were going about?
No, they were for kids.
Yeah.
The only time you'd ever hear one on the radio would be George Formby.
Yeah.
Something like that, of course, was a genius at it,
Indeed.
you know. But now, I believe they have ukulele orchestras.
They're all over the place.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I think there's even
Massive.
one from Cork, you know.
Yeah, that's very big. Which is good. I mean, it's a
It's
good
great, yeah.
introduction to music. It's simple. I suppose like the recorder is to kids as well. You get an idea.
It's Hawaiian, isn't it?
Yeah.
And of course now they're making really, you know, flash ones in sort of clover wood or something, and
Yeah.
rosewood and beautiful inlays and all this stuff, making really beautiful ones now.
I mean, as far as I understand it, it was the Portuguese cowboys that were imported to Hawaii to look after the ranching when
Really?
they brought their Spanish instruments, you know,
Yeah.
and the Hawaiians got their hands on the instruments and started evolving them into things, because they only had a kind of song tradition beforehand. They didn't have an instrumental tradition.
Yeah.
And it's that sort of crossover thing. The other thing I love the story about, you know, the Hawaiians, because they were great horse riders, because they all worked on the ranches at the turn of the 20th century. They had that massive exhibition in LA in the 1920s. A lot of the Hawaiians went over, and they had a really successful Hawaiian pavilion, and it became a real, you know, really big trend in vaudeville music to hear Hawaiian players. And it was a sudden explosion of all this, you know, slide Hawaiian stuff. But a lot of the guys who were really good cowboys and horse riders, they got jobs in the early cowboy and Indian films in Hollywood because they looked like Indians, and nobody actually knew what Indians looked like anyway. So even though they were actually Hawaiians, it's actually Hawaiian guys, you know, fighting the cowboy and Indians.
But then the ukulele became a big, like American college instrument, didn't it? You know, when you see those what is it called? Freshmen and all that come out of college, the fellas, like, you know, they'd take the girlfriends down to the beach and they'd all be playing ukes, you know, they became very popular that way.
And then from art college, you went across to Ireland, and you went to Dublin, did you?
Yeah, and then Dublin was, as I said earlier, Swedish, but the Dubliners were the main force, I would say, at the time, you know. The Clancy brother types, they were based in the States at that stage, you know.
And were there the sessions that you would go along to and join in? Were you accepted with a bouzouki, or, you know?
No, I didn't go. I went to sessions, I didn't play. I didn't know any of it apart from biting the head.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So when you went to Ireland, you had the bouzouki already?
No.
No.
No. I had a guitar. I had a guitar for about 6-7 years. No. No, when this friend of mine, Eamon Canner, went to Greece, brought it back, about a year afterwards I moved down to the west, you know, and just started flaking around on it, really, you know, sessions.
Oh, it was Eamon Cannon, Kathleen's husband?
No, somebody had the same name.
Ah, right.
So what sort of year would you have rolled up in Dublin then, the first time?
Well, when I was 18, whatever that is.
61, 62? When were you born?
1944.
Yeah, 62.
62 then.
Yeah.
So we're pretty much at the start of the kind of ballad group thing and everything as well around that time, I'd imagine.
Well, the ballad group, if you called the Dubliners a ballad group, which I suppose you would, yes. They had a couple of folk clubs around the place, you know. A lot of it was singing. There wasn't that much in Dublin. That is, there wasn't much like sessions, traditional music sessions. But there were down the country.
Yeah.
You know, there was still a lot of them kicking.
And did you experience them at all? I mean, were you wandering about in Ireland?
Only when I went to Spiddle.
Right.
Really, you know.
So what happened when you went to Galway then? I mean, what took you over there first of all? From Dublin to Galway when you sort of moved to the west?
Hawking.
Right.
We could fly to Hawks, you know, Hawking or Falcon.
Right.
It's a better place for hunting with the hawks.
And what was the music scene there like? I mean, can you...
In Galway, bit of traditional, few ballads, bit of rock and roll, and then country and Irish, you know, Big Tom and the Mainlanders. It was a big show band period in Ireland, you know, with a dreadful show band. I mean, playing to thousands of people, massive dance halls. You know, as you were saying earlier, huge. That was the main thing, and still is big.
Yeah.
You know.
So how long were you in Dublin when you first moved over?
When I moved to Galway,
When you were in Dublin, how long did you stay there before you moved out to?
10 years.
Right.
Then I went down to Spiddle.
That's when you shared a flat with Phil Lynott.
Yep, I did for a couple of years.
There's a great photograph of the two of you at that time. You had it on the fridge and...
No, it's just somewhere, yeah. There's only black person in Ireland. Bought from a doctor, I think, you know.
So was is it Hughes Pub in
Hughes'
Spiddle?
pub in Spiddle, yeah.
And was that the place to be if you were interested in?
Well, it was, there was, in Spiddle, yeah, it's the only one that did it. But in Galway, there was a cellar bar and a place called the Eagle that had Coulter sessions. Because Coulter's Coulterier and kept these sessions going in country pubs and this type of thing. Mainly old fellas playing fiddles and accordions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Young kids, but it wasn't. They might meet once a month or something, or once every 2
And
weeks.
they had
you know
no
what
accompanying tradition either.
I mean? Oh no,
No.
apart from some wifey on the piano.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Was it stronger there, do you think, than other places because it's a Gaeltacht area, or?
No, it's
No.
not stronger there. It'd be much more stronger in Clare.
Mm-hmm.
And up in sort of Cavan now is very big, where they sometimes have the flower, you know.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It doesn't weather away. And of course, in the Gaeltacht area, which was around there, it was all the songs were in Irish. You know what I mean? There's a lot of shadows and all that there, but not a huge history of fiddle players or accordion players. You know,
Yeah.
not really.
So you were effectively in Galway and Spiddle in the early 70s playing music
Yeah,
and flying your hawk.
yeah.
Did the early incarnation of Dedanan, did that come out of sessions or?
We came out of sessions in Hughes's. We were playing there, and somebody offered us to join a Coltus concert in Dublin. You know, with various Coltus branches were playing. We played on that, and then I think somebody offered us a job, playing somewhere. You know, and then somebody offered us to go to the States in 1976 with the bicentennial celebrations. You know.
Yeah, yeah. And was the early lineup, was it fluid or was it kind of almost sort of
Well, it was
formed?
solid.
It fixed from
Yeah,
the start.
well, until Dolores Kane left to get married.
Yeah.
She left after the first. She was on the first album, then she left to marry John Porter. She moved to London, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Then it was fluid. You know, various singers would come in and find a bit of a reputation, and then they want their own band, so they would take the lion's share of the money. You see, you can employ people to accompany them, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And also, they only got, if they're playing with Dedanan, they'd only have maybe 5 songs or 4 songs, you know, in the night. The rest would be music, and that left them a bit,
Yeah.
you know, nothing much to do. It's not much fun, I suppose, you
I
know.
remember Mary and Dolores just ended up having a table.
It was it,
drinks
a table
and
and drinks,
sat
like,
like a sort of cafe bar in the
Yeah.
side of the stage, passing time.
Did you have any kind of idea, musically about the band, what it was set out to do or to achieve?
Well, not really, but I suppose we had a bit of fun messing around, using that Irish sort of genre to mess around with other tunes, like whether they were classical or rock and roll, or we usually took one of those in tongue-in-cheek type of thing into an album, you know what I mean? And see just to see if people could recognise it for what it was, you know, if it was done on fiddles and banjos, bazookas and all that, you know. So we usually put one of those on, which I normally came up with for whatever reason, you know. And strange enough, like if you're playing in somewhere like, well, wherever abroad, including America, it might be the only tunes that the audience would recognise the whole night. The rest would all sound the same to them, like Chinese music does to us, you know.
Yeah.
If you played Hey Jude or something, or Queen of Sheba, they would hook on. That would get the best applause, even though it's the tackiest thing of the night, you know.
So going back to the thing you said about Coltus and you had the invitation to go and play in Dublin and all that, was there a kind of an impression about Coltus and that whole movement versus the sort of more bohemian setup of the bands?
Yeah, because Coltus is an organisation like the GA where they actually, you know, the housewives make all the buns and sandwiches for the weekend, and the money goes to Coltus to promote Irish traditional music, and they have a place in Monkstown in Dublin. And I don't think a lot of the powers that be in it were too happy about the likes of, say, Planksy or Dedanan or body bands, those type of thing, going abroad and making lots and lots of spondulics, which they weren't getting. So they were never really that particular. You know, if you not under that umbrella, you weren't exactly going to be, you know. How can I put it? I do play there the odd time with Noel Hill in Monkstown, you know, just the two of us. He plays the concertina, but they would basically invite him.
Yeah.
He would still have a small something to do with Coltus. Very, very highly respected for starters, but you wouldn't get any of the bands, Popular Clonards or any of those crew playing for it, you know.
So, I suppose we're up to. Let me see now. When did Dannon make their first album?
74, 5?
Yeah, around that.
And you first heard them on the radio around about the same time, maybe a little
No,
later?
it was actually 78 that
Okay.
I stumbled across them. But they'd played over here previous to that in Edinburgh. I mean, I wasn't in Edinburgh at that time.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I was still at university in Aberdeen. But you played in the opposite Sandy Bells, didn't you? You did a gig at the festival.
Over the festival, yeah. Part of a Druid, a theatre company from Galway.
Oh, the Druid
Did a
Company.
play, yeah, we did a play there.
And you were just doing the accompanying music in the background to
Yeah.
the play, right? And there was a huge number of people at that time, you know, guys like Peter McClements and
Mhm.
all that generation, who all ran into Alec and the boys in Sandy Bells, because at half time they used to pile across to Sandy Bells. And
Oh yeah, most of the time.
so there was, you know, and the music was surfacing pretty hard and through Jock Thompson's Bairns and all those guys
Oh,
at
yeah,
the
of
time, you
course.
know, so there was a lot of crossover then.
And what about you two? How did you first meet?
Having heard the band and listened to them as a student, I eventually went to, took some of my mates who'd got an invite to a wedding of a university friend in Bangor in the Northern Islands, and I had a car and they had the invites. So we went, and I think it was 1981. We drove to, well, headed off to Ireland, which was like heading off to Mauritius or something. I mean, you know, it was terra incognito, you know. And I had a dark green Renault 4 with British number plates, which caused all sorts of mayhem in the north, you know, because it was the height of the Troubles. And we were all big guys, you know, in the Renault 4, so we put all our luggage, stuck tents on it, on the roof rack. And I was working on the West Mains farm, and I got fertiliser bags to keep the luggage all dry, you know, which was maybe not the best choice of
Yeah, tatty sacks might have been better.
Daddy said fertiliser bags was definitely got the army a bit twitchy, you know. So, but we went to the wedding, and we first of all went to Buncrana because Planxty were playing at a festival there, and we saw Planxty at that festival, which was great. And then we headed down the west, and I had the first Dedan album cover, and I knew that they'd been formed in Spittle, you know.
Mm.
So in this pub Hughes's, you know, so it took us there. And I went into Hughes's, and we just went up to the bar and I said, you know, is this band playing here, you know, in my youthful naivety, and Breda Hughes said, no, they're not here, I think they're on tour, but I'll phone up and find out for you. So she phoned your wife,
Yeah.
and she said, Leonie said, I think they're in Kilkenny tomorrow night. So we got the map out and we got back in the car and we headed off to Kilkenny and went to the Great Southern Hotel or something like that, and they were doing a gig there. And I was with Andrew Barber, Freeland's brother, and another chap who's also equally huge. And we got there really early, and we got our few pints in, and we got our front row seats, and then we settled down, and the band came on, and it was Maura O'Connell was singing at the time. She was the singer doing all the Irish Molly kind of. It was that sort of vintage of their music. And Charlie Piggott had left the band, and Mary Bergam was playing with you, I think.
Really?
Yeah. And the music was just extraordinary. I mean, it was, you know, it was the band, you know, really in their prime, you know, just absolutely on fire. And it was an amazing gig, and we went to the bar at the end of the night and sort of introduced ourselves, and I think you were pretty astonished to find Scots guys in the middle of Ireland who were listening to your music.
No, I thought they were after Ringo. There's three huge fellas in the front row. I thought Ringo's been screwing one of their sisters or something, you know what I mean? And they've come for revenge. They weren't a normal type of an audience, if you know what I mean.
But that was the first time I met Alec, and at the end of the night he said, look, if you're in Oranmore, here's my address, and you know, come and stay, give us a shout, you know. So rather foolishly, and so the following year I went back with Andrew Barber, and we went on another sort of walkabout tour. We got invited on one occasion to a party at Ard Fry, do you remember?
Oh yeah, that's gone now.
And we turned up in our kilts at midnight, you know, and arrived at this sort of party like we'd just come off a longboat, you know, and that caused quite a stir. And it was even more of a stir when we got lost trying to find the party, and I knocked on a farmer's door, and the farmer's wife came to the door, and their faces, I've never forgotten their faces, to these two Scots guys standing there, you know. But we that's when we met, and I was finishing a postgrad degree in 81, and I was doing a bit of field work up in Rassay. I travelled up from Southampton to to Rossi, and I stopped at a friend's in Durham, and he said, "Oh, I think Didanen are playing in Keswick or Kendal, you know, the brewery in Kendal." So he said, I said, "Well, come on, let's go over." So we drove over from Durham to Kendal and went to the gig, and he was, "Oh, great to see you." And we got talking. The first thing he did to me was, she said, "Oh, look, there's a fiver on the floor," and I bent down, and it was one of these trick ones on a spring that disappeared back into your pocket. So that caused vast merriment at my expense. And then at the end of the night, he said, "What are you doing in the autumn?" And I said, "I'm just finishing my degree, and then I'm not sure." He said, "So well, we need a roadie for our tour to America, and how do you fancy it?" So I said, "Yeah, fantastic, So in the autumn, I left Southampton and I went overland to Galway and found myself sitting outside your castle in Oranmore, and on a balmy summer's evening, eating smoked salmon, drinking champagne, and then we went to Shannon, and Mary Black had just joined the band, and we headed off for 8 weeks around America, and that was just absolutely extraordinary. I haven't really recovered, to be honest. And I did that for 5 years, much to my parents' complete horror, But it was really amazing times. I mean, they could sit and talk about that for weeks, because there's so much went on. There was so much exciting music and places and people and sights, and every night you were hearing this fantastic band, So at the same time, I was really kind of looking to play my own music. I really was wanting to get back into the Scottish fold, because I was very keen to play more. And I think about 1989 or about 87 or 88, about then I stopped touring with the band. I got really friendly with Freeland Barber by then, and we formed the Occasionals at that stage. 86 really it was. That's when I sort of focused on trying to play Scottish music in a reasonable manner with the band, But using the banjo and overdubbing with bouzouki and mandolins on the recordings and giving it a different
But when I first used to come over, a lot of the music in Stanley Bells was Irish.
It still is.
Still is, yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, not when we go in, it isn't.
No.
No.
Maybe we sec just to put these windshields on.
It seemed very strange to me. It would be like you coming to Galway and listen to Scottish music.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I think that's something that a lot of people observe about certain sessions.
Yeah.
Is that they, I'm thinking of people actually. Here's a good example, like Catherine Nichol, who is a marvellous Scottish fiddle player from Kirriemuir, but she plays exclusively Irish.
Strange to do.
Well, the thing was,
the
thing was like there wasn't a pub session scene in Scotland until the Irish music scene exploded.
Yeah.
I mean, it really, it evolved because Irish traditional music in the session is a lot more accessible to a punter who doesn't know anything about it than playing Strathspeys and
you think so?
Well, to the general, it's much more up tempo, and it's all basically up tempo. Whereas we have a lot more variation in our tempo structures.
Yeah.
Which
within sets as well, I sometimes find this.
Yeah.
At March Just Being Real, for example.
And it's taken a long time for it's kind of been a time lag, because I mean the Irish thing was, it was a little bit like for you hearing the blues in the 60s.
Yeah.
A lot of young musicians at the time heard the Irish thing, the Plankstay thing particularly, had a lot of impact on people, and then they played it because and it sort of filtered in. But it's now of course globally currency. I mean, if you go to a German pub, they play Irish tunes.
Oh, I know that. Yeah, it's like Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
But
what about your playing together since the late 80s? What have you played on together, or what collaborative projects have you had?
Having done the work with the Occasionals, we had quite a lot of currency with Green Tracks. We were relatively successful for a dance band, and Freeland Barber had taken over the running. He bought Castle Sound Studios. He encouraged me at that stage. I bought quite a few of these nice stringed instruments, the resonated tenor guitars I've got, the mandolins, bouzoukis, and I was dabbling to sort of explore playing Scottish music on these things myself, and with overdubs and whatnot. And Freeland said, "You should make an album." So I managed to get a deal, incredibly. Ian Green was incredibly supportive, as he has been for many people. But it was 1998, 99. I went to see the Dylan in Glasgow at Celtic Connections. We were standing at the bar, and I said to Alec, I'm going to try a solo album. And I distinctly remember him saying, well, I better come over because you'll need all the help you can get. so I said, geez, would you? That'd be fantastic. He said, oh, I'd love to. So I said, right. And Frankie Gavin was standing beside us, and he said, what are you doing? I said, oh, Alec's going to come. He said, and to Edinburgh and do some recording. And Frankie said, oh, can I come too? I said, right, yeah, great. So the two boys came over, got it all organised. And that was when you do, I don't know if you remember, but you did a wee gig in the counting house, just you and Frankie, the night before we recorded.
Yeah.
And that was.
That's right.
I think I was at that gig.
Were you?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, it went down in a lot of people's memory. It was a great gig.
Yeah, no, I remember that.
So
what's the counting house?
It's just a little venue. It's an old little venue in town here.
Right.
I have a vague memory of Corinne Paulwart doing the support.
She did. She did.
Yeah.
She did. That was one of her very first gigs.
That's
Actually.
right.
Who?
A singer girl who's gone on to critical and big acclaim. She's a Scottish singer.
Right.
That was one of her first gigs, and I remember I'd never met her before, and she turned up, and me and Leo McCann did a wee support slot, but Karine sang first, and I thought, God, that girl's good, and right enough, she was. But we went to the studio the next day, and we did some recording. I think we did 4 tracks in total. But that was the first sort of time that we'd. And the thing that interested me about that, getting someone of Alex and Frankie's stature onto an unknown Scottish album was the fact I was actually trying to make a Scottish album. I actually gave Alec repertoire that was Scottish. There's no point in getting Alec over here to play, Irish reels and jigs. I mean that's pointless, So, and Alex, you've got a real interest in.
Oh, I love it.
Scottish
I think the Scottish airs are much nicer than the Irish ones. Myself, I think there's much larger font to them for starters.
And the march sort of tempo.
Yeah, I like all that stuff. Great. I'm not able to play it, but I busked my way through it. You know what I mean?
And then we then actually did I thought it was too good an opportunity to miss. So a couple of years later, I think it was 2003. I put together a whole repertoire to do a duet album, and I lured Alec over here with promises of whiskey and fun and all that stuff, and we did the Paul Bain to Oranmore album, which was a lot of really mainly Scottish stuff. So, and then the third one I did, you came over and did a bit of recording, and then we've just started this other one which Alec was working on yesterday. So yeah, I mean for me it's amazing. It's like you've got a pub rock and roll band and Keith Richards comes and plays with you. It's a real luxury, to be honest.
Great. I'm quite curious to know more, Alec, about how you find things like strathspeys, which are notoriously sort of difficult to accompany anyway. Things like the Scotch snap in it.
Very difficult.
Yeah.
Because the snaps are coming in all sorts of places you wouldn't expect them. Very difficult, but
I tell you what's interesting though is that the bouzouki itself intrinsically has a long note. It's got the delay, but it's also because the Greek instruments have this edge. So when you actually play that note, you get the snap, and it, can actually play it with a good dotted crotchet pattern quite easily, and it sounds good, But not a lot of people do it. I mean, nobody. I mean, I don't know anybody else who plays, bouzouki on in a Scottish manner. I mean it's, my grandfather went over the top playing the bagpipes in 1918, and my father plays the pipes, and I'm basically I'm a thwarted piper, but I like the sound of these. I like the repertoire. The actual piping repertoire is massive to me. It's really important.
There's this Irish American Ross Daly. Ever heard of him?
Yeah,
He lives on Crete, and he has sort of bouzouki schools, and apparently plays the lira in the little. Yeah,
he's very good.
He's apparently the best.
Yeah.
He has these summer schools on Crete every year. A friend of mine from France goes over regularly, I've never met him.
But I was thinking before about what you were saying about your melody playing, and it occurred to me that perhaps that's one of the reasons why what you do together works so well is with the counterpoint, Alec's counterpoint back into the tunes that complements your melodic style, I think.
Well, yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too that the open DAD tuning, you know, it doesn't clutter up the music, you know, and the way a guitar does. I mean, I'm not particularly keen on the modern style of guitar accompaniment, which is really rather over the top and aggressive and almost just the rhythm instrument. You might as well just be hitting a plank of wood, you know. And Alex is the antithesis of that. I mean, it's extremely considered contrapuntal, you know, and it's half melodic based too. So you know, when you actually hear Alex's accompaniment, to me, that it's following the melody, but it's rhythmic too. It's extremely clever.
And it's quite a flowing style as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I was quite curious about the Strath Spays, whether you find that the flow is either more difficult to maintain.
It is, yeah.
But the examples that you did actually learn on the Paul Bain's Oranmore album, that I mean, there's a really great example of Alex playing on a 2/4 march, and it works, you know, but it's very different. And I think that was, to me, the real fascination was to see whether, you know, it could come together. It's much looser than you'd get with, say, a piano player or someone accompanying you, but it's much more organic and interesting, you know, to me.
We were talking about it yesterday. There's one tune we were playing yesterday, there was a snap, so but every time it comes around, they're in a different place.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. What about the other sort of, not the duality, but the relationship of jigs and 6/8 marches? Is that something that...
Well, I'm educating Alec gradually. It's taking a long time, to be honest. I mean, we played the set yesterday, and Alec said to me, it was a 6/8 march, a 4-parter, and Alec was working with it, and he said, you're playing it differently the second time round. I said, well, actually, there's 4 parts. It's not the same tune twice, you know. So, you know, little things like that, which is just simply Alec's. Alec is not, you know, as familiar with the idiom, or why would he be, as I am? But I mean, I've said this before, but I mean, you've got one of the most exceptional ears for just
but you'd never. It'd take me years to get it dead right. To get it right. I mean, how would you?
But it wouldn't be as interesting then. Actually, that's what I like about it. I mean, I'm not. I mean, I play in a very structured way with the occasionals, but actually, we have a lot of subtle looseness in the playing that gives us a distinctive sound. You know.
But do you think that's why it's quite important to have a distinction between, you know, jigs and 6/8? It's that for dancing it's quite important, particularly.
Well, I mean, jigs is a classic misconception because you know, an Irish jig is utterly different from a Scottish dance jig. You know, they're structured totally differently. The Irish play them very differently, and I mean, if we actually choose to play, you know, the set for the Bridge of Athlone, then we will use Irish jigs, but we will play them in a manner that works for Scottish dancing. You know, but they still don't feel as right as playing proper Scottish dance jigs, you know, because they're written differently. They're structured differently for Scottish dancing, you know, and it's just and that's exactly the same with reels. I mean, I quite often squirm when I hear people trying to play, you know, reels for dancing, and they're playing Irish reels, or they're playing, you know, the wrong type of reel. You know, they just haven't understood that Scottish dance reels are written for that purpose of moving the dancer's feet well, and played in a manner to do that as well. You know, so and 6/8 marches, they're marches. You know, they're not jigs; they're marches, and I mean, I feel quite strongly that these things should be played the way they were written for the reason they were written. You know. And you're going back to the military repertoire, which is, you know, they are there for a function. You know, they're for moving troops' feet.
I mean, I think certainly in Steve's and my background of listening to a lot of Irish music when we were both interested in bouzouki and you know, guitar and mandolin and things like that, because people like us have had, you know, massive exposure to Irish music, we're maybe a bit more aware of the differences in Irish music between double jigs and single jigs and things like that. But I imagine it's much the same. It's having to accommodate another tradition and the distinctions in that tradition between things that superficially sound quite similar.
Yeah.
So a 6/8 march and a jig, to a lot of people these days, is identical. Maybe for the reason you mentioned, that it's been detached from its...
I think that's where, you know, the tradition is slightly breaking down. Is that people have lost the connection between the reason why the music's being played, or was played first of all, and the bulk of the music we played was played for dancing, but the bulk of traditional musicians nowadays, they've never seen a dancer. They don't.
I mean, in Ireland now, that river dance has done amazing damage to Irish music. I mean, all those Eastern European rhythms, which Andy Irvine was the first to come up with, but he was using them in songs mainly, just for, but nearly every young girl that has played the fiddle or danced with is now playing and writing their own version of it, which is total shitebox, you know what I mean? And they play them at sessions. You remember, three of them might play together. They might play for 2 hours. There might be some old fella that they don't play one Irish tune. They're all the tunes they've written themselves, and I haven't heard one good one. They're awful. You know what I mean? They're just other versions of the river dancing mixed with the books of Oranmore, mixed with this. Awful.
And
there's an awful lot of that going on.
Hearing that slightly too with some of the, there's been this real reawakening in the tradition through the fashion movement, and I'm slightly concerned that you're hearing the kids playing their own tunes. They're not referencing back into the tradition, Whereas when we started, I went along and I listened to the old guy with his trumpet, Jim Brown with his button box, old fellas up Glen Isla, and you listened to what they were doing, and you sat quietly and tried to work out, can I play this? Then you go away and try and find a tune in Kerr's Merry Melodies or somewhere and get the notes sorted out. But stylistically, you wanted to play to these guys because that was the real deal,
Do you think there's an access problem in terms of young musicians because there's so many of them now, compared to when you were starting out? Obviously, if there were 10 people turning up to play, you have to listen to Jim Brown. If
you were lucky, yeah. I mean, there were little sort of outposts of people, like Mike Ward in Dundee, the fiddle player. I mean, he was the guy who the traditional music world moved around. The whole thing's become so much more global, I mean, it's just the same as everything nowadays. I mean, you begin to sound sort of curmudgeonly about it, but it's highly accessible through all the internet and all the rest of it. But I don't think the experience of it is the same as the excitement of the.
It struck me that something that was common to both of your experiences of getting into the music was that you kind of you had your own serendipitous route into it, about finding instruments, about finding players that you really resonated with, but that maybe these days there's more of a structured, ready-made path into a career even in traditional music.
Which is an oxymoron. I mean, to have a career in traditional music is frankly absurd. I mean, what's the point of traditional music? It's something that you enjoy at the end of a day's work. Alec comes over here, we go to Sandy Bells and we sit and have a really nice tune with John Martin, and we really enjoy having the tune. It's not about performing. It's not about being seen. It's it
is in the young Irish at the moment, the river dance group. It's all, I mean, the guys are wearing serious makeup. Orange tan and dyed blonde. I mean, really tarting themselves up for the dancing business, Playing music at outrageous speeds, which nobody's ever heard before, which is to hear again. There's an awful lot of that going on.
Turning that around, are there any sort of younger, let's give the cut off at age of 30, are there any younger players that you do rate?
Oh yeah, loads.
Quite different styles.
Loads. There's still a lot of the original type of thing going on, but it's just that particular computerized Irish music, because apparently most of that was done on computer. You just get a tune, stick it in the computer, press certain buttons, and change parts around. And then you're forced to come up with something. Which sort of, there's a lot of young people that are very, very good musicians.
Yeah, and I mean,
very good pipers. Yeah. Very good accordion players, loads of them.
Would you say you've got maybe 3 people that stand out to you, maybe?
Difficult to answer questions like that in case you're insulted. Anyone hears it and you haven't mentioned them.
Well, plus, you don't go out to sessions, and you don't go out amongst those.
I do a little bit. I mean, it depends on if you're talking about a particular age group. There's an Irish American called Colin Gannon who I play a bit with, who's very, very good. Very interesting style of playing.
What does he play?
He plays accordion, button accordion. Yeah. He's very good. There's
you like playing with John Carty? I mean, he's
John Carty.
A little bit older, of course. But.
Yeah, and Tommy Kane, Tommy Jackie's son. He won the Piper of the Year award last year. On the Pipes. There's a lot of the real McCoy. But there's also a lot of the unreal McCoy with the dyed hair and the makeup and the. I don't like Irish dancing for a starter, so I'm a bit bigoted, I think it doesn't suit girls, it's a man's dance. You know, if you're wearing a pair of pants and a pair of clogs, it looks great. Legs, long legs, and you know, a big pair of clogs on the end of it, to me is not elegant. You know. And we did a bloody an Irish festival in Milan this St Patrick's Day, and there was this little mini team of river dance on, you know. And they came on and did the thing, you know, and it was a bit like a pantomime, you know. The next thing, they went off, they came back on again, just in bra and knickers. And the guys in underpants. Black underpants. And started doing the clog dancing. I mean, it was the most revolting thing you could have, it just wasn't right, you know. They were nude Irish step dancing, basically, you know what I mean?
Sounds like a fringe show to me.
Yeah.
What?
A festival fringe show that'd probably be.
That's what it should be in it. Say you're a Scottish dance thing here when you dance, they all took off their clothes.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing.
But in the Scottish zone, yeah, I mean, certainly there are, you know, people coming through. They just a similar answer. But interestingly, I've met a lot of young musicians coming through who've been through the Scottish study. Just, you know, they come with an appreciation of the tradition, and they've studied it, and they actually carry it. You know, I think of the Tiger Falzett. Do you remember? You know, he's a colleague of yours, and I mean, he's a great, you know, bundle of musicality. Duncan McGilvray, the great Highland piper, his daughter Mary's McGilvry's been in town, you know, and she has assiduously studied, as she quaintly put it, to the old men at the session. Don't quote me on that, Mary. But you know, they do come with you know, they want to learn, you know, and they want to study the, you know, quite how we do it, you know, and quite how it's done. Not that we're, you know, any better or any worse than anybody else, but I suppose it's because I'm not interested in playing flash fast stuff, you know. I get very tired of that, to be honest.
What about the you mentioned the school Scottish study, but what about RSND or the Royal Conservatoire these days? Do you have any experience of?
No, I have no experience with it apart from Freeland Barber was involved with setting it up, of course. So I had a lot, you know, heard a lot of, you know, the background to it, and I mean it's good. I mean, you know, you're giving a formal education degree to traditional music, I suppose. But
well, they do this in Ireland as well. Of course,
you know, where are they going to get jobs? I mean, there's no money out there for
because they're only going to get jobs teaching it in an American university, really. Because you know, if you were forming a group, and some young fella came up with a certificate from the Irish school of, you know, a BA in playing the timbres, you're not going to just hear him, it's any good, give him the job. The qualification is not going to get you a job with a band or anyone else, it's only going to get a job teaching, you know.
You know, I mean, when I started playing, my education, as such it was being taken by Jim Brown in the back of his Austin Maxi to go and do a gig in a barn with the Foundry Bar Band, you know. And now that was an education, you know, that was extraordinary. You know,
but it's fabulous. I mean, the Limerick College. You know, I do a bit of teaching there sometime in the summer. It was grandiose. I mean, the theatre show to bring Japanese dancers and all sorts of diverse things, and they study there for 2 or 3 years, you know, and then they come out with this piece of paper. You know, you're a BA of the concertina or something, and they love it. You know, they've got their accommodation and. You know. Yeah.
But it seems that if you go through, as you put it, formal education, you're mostly surrounded by your own peer group who are going through the same process. Which, you know, the people you mentioned are a generation above usually, or maybe 2 generations above, and maybe that's what we're.
I think that if you're going to keep the strength of the certainly the musical and probably the song tradition going too. You really have to have a much stronger link with the older generation and actually respect the older generation, you know. And I mean, I've done that with Alec Macleod up in Appleby, who's a relative of mine, and he's he's as original as it comes, and for me to sit and play with him, who is such fun, you know, because he's been doing it for 60 years in the Northwest Highlands, you know. He's a great player. But his approach to it is just so wonderful. You know, he fishes his lobsters and he makes model boats and he's always up to things, you know, and he sits and he goes and gets his paper in the morning, then he has a few tunes on the box and fishes a few lobsters, you know, and that to me is where the music really comes from, you know. So I'm always learning from him, you know. So I don't know how you keep that going, because it's not easy in the modern world, really. Yeah.
Well, I was going to just ask, maybe to tail end the conversation, your plans, your thoughts on the future about your own music, and I mean, I know you're recording just now together.
Yeah.
But maybe individually, Alec, do you have any plans for your musical?
Not really, just enjoying myself really. I play, it's nice, this is great pleasure to come over here and play learn a few Scottish, learn how to accompany a few Scottish tunes. And then I'm doing a bit with Dave Dannon, and I'm doing a bit with an accordion player called Mary Staunton. We do session in a village called Kinvara every so often, a bit with Noel Hilda, the concertina player, a bit with Kathleen Cannon, the harper, which I find very interesting. That's nearly all Baroque sort of O'Carroll stuff, and it works. I really like doing that.
How do you approach actually learning that? Because they're more complicated pieces.
Yeah, it's more structured. I have to actually practice that. A little bit, you know what I mean? A little bit.
But
depending on what she's doing,
You don't read score, of course.
No. But some of those are quite complicated,
Yeah.
But great fun to do.
And does that push your technique on the bouzouki then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot more, you can do a lot more work, in it, with
Mm.
that, with the harp.
Because I mean, I've always observed that you sort of build your play. If you play a tune 2 or 3 turns, or something, you actually build on it. It's fairly straightforward, and then you add to it, and then you get to a point where it's much more complicated.
Yeah, you change it every time it comes round.
But with the harp kind of music, I mean, you would create a complicated arrangement first and foremost. Yeah. Right. And can you do it all in one take?
Oh yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Amazing.
Well, I haven't done much recording with it. I mean, it's mainly.
I know you've done about 4 albums with it.
Have I?
Yeah. They're very good
Are
albums.
you sure? No.
You've done at least 3. You have.
Have I?
They're really good albums, actually.
But that's sort of fun. And that's it. But no more world travelling to any extent. It's not on with the airport situation now, and the security and the money in the States, and it's not possible.
Yeah. Kevin, what about you? What are your plans?
Well, last year we lost our fiddle player Ian Hardy to cancer, as you know, and that was a big kind of blow to everybody. We did actually manage to get a recording done with him, miraculously. I don't know how he did it because he was so ill, but he did an extraordinary overdub. Actually, we had to do it as an overdub. He was too ill to travel, but he got the whole album recorded. And that was a pretty, that was not the end of the occasional by any means, because Mary Campbell's come back into the fold, but we don't get enough gigs. We don't get gigs where we can put a full band out regularly, but we still have the 4 of us, as the band for recording and broadcasting things. But the next stage with the band would be to maybe do something with Mary in a year or two's time. If we get ourselves sorted out, get another repertoire. We'll see. We're still on Green Tracks, but the whole CD market has collapsed, as you know, and the access to material is now, people are just not buying CDs. So we'll see what happens there. I'm not sure quite where we'll go. Freeland and I have occasionally thought of doing a sort of a duet album, but he's been really busy doing a major 6 CD recording of the music for old time Scottish dance, so he's been very occupied with that, and he's about to publish all his tunes, over 600 tunes, so he's busy on those projects. So and at the moment, I mean, there's a nice gap at the moment for me where I'm just I thought I'd just try this new recording. I every time Alec comes over and John Martin's around, John and I have played together since the late 80s, and I love his playing, and we get on great musically and socially, and he's a great fella. But when Alec's over, the 3 of us just have a really nice tune together, and we go in the afternoons to Sandy Bells and have a tune.
We're not going today, are we?
If you want to. No, I don't think so. We've done that to death.
I suppose we have.
But we that I'd always wanted to actually. Always had in the back of my mind. I'd love to have a recording of myself and John and Alec. Because they're two of the. As a musician, there are one or two people who you would kill to play with, and you just it's as good as it gets when you sit and play with them, and it's certainly the case with those two guys and Freeland as well, and one or two others, but it's that's as good as it gets for me. And I just thought it'd be nice to try a recording, so we've started that, and it's gone. We've got 4 solid tracks finished now. So
when do you think that's going to come out?
I have no idea. I'm not doing it with a record deal or anything. I'm just paying an engineer and just do the artwork myself and print a couple of 100 copies and just. It's really. I mean, it's these things are they're almost vanity publishing. Nobody's really listening terribly much to my kind of stuff. And there's a few people who are interested, but I mean, you're not going to see it in Sainsbury's, and good though it might be, and certainly with the supporting cast, it's Luke Plum's going to do a bit with me as well, because he's coming over in December, and I did a bit of recording with him on the last album with Ali Bake, and I really like playing with Luke. And Chris Drever offered to do a bit of work too, so I'll see how I get on, see where it goes. But it's just one of these things I'll work away at it. And also, it's our kind of age, a bit younger than you, but it just takes more out of you to do these things. It just becomes harder. So if you're going to do anything, do it now while you're still able, as opposed to start to dribble and go bonkers. Because
It's already started the thing.
Tell that to Mick Jagger.
Well, I was going to ask, just to finish off, how you'd feel, and please don't feel obliged, of maybe playing a couple of tunes just to close it. Maybe even a Strasbourg or a V6
Oh no,
here.
I don't think we'd attempt that. No, but I don't know. I hadn't realised.
I don't mind playing a tune.
Just even one
yeah,
set, maybe?
let me have a think.
Something I know, if possible.
Okay,
Yeah, on what?
whatever you like.
Bazooka in the Mandolin.
I could do 2 bazookies.
If you wish.
I'll get the mandolin.
Well, it's up to you. You're
No,
playing.
I'm just trying to think what you can remember.
That's the problem.
Yeah, not a lot.
Thanks
I
to
suppose-
Sicily, I know that.
Oh yeah. Okay, we'll just play
Yeah?
Farewell to the Creeps. That
No, the third part, I've forgotten it.
was.
I didn't get the second part right.
No, you nearly got it.
Yeah.
Do it again.
Yeah.
Do you want to play?
Lovely, great stuff.
Yeah, that's the kind of the bouzouki sound in Scotland.
What tuning are you using on the 4-course, Kevin?
It's just an octave down from the fiddle. Yeah, E A D
So an
G.
E on the top.
E on the top. Yeah. I can only play that way. I learnt the fiddle and that's it. It's stuck in my head. Nothing else works for me. It's a big stretch in places, but I know how to do it. So. But that's the tetrachord, that's the Greek 4-course as opposed to the 3-course that Alex is playing. Both of these came from Athens, actually. This one came from Athens. That one came from Thessaloniki, where your bouzouki comes from.
Well, this is where they play this type, which seems to be much louder than that.
It is, yeah.
Just maybe me playing it.
Well, the thing is, I've actually with this one, I've changed it. The first start, I mean, it's Greek, so the idea of playing it in Scottish music is a bit daft anyway. But when I went and got it, I brought it home and I changed the bridge and the nut to take paired D and G strings as opposed to the octaves that they have in Greece, and also the stringing it's the top 4 strings on a guitar.
Yeah.
In the way they use it. On the I mean, it's as Alec was saying earlier. I mean, it's a 1960s invention.
Is that the top 4 strings on a guitar?
That's what
that is.
No, this is
that's what the Greeks use.
The Greeks use. Yeah, that's why they use it. They wanted to have the bouzouki sound, but the guitarists want to be able just to swap.
But you can see that the sound is completely different than a flatback bouzouki. It's like it's nasal. It's like it's sweeter nasal. It's a different.
There's an internal resonance that I've always liked. I started off on a £32 Greek bouzouki. Well, it's probably made in Romania or Italy. To be honest.
I know the one
from Dens Road Market in Dundee.
Oh, really? Really?
And I played it till I was about 21. I think, for 5 or 6 years.
Well, the very first one I got, I had a very loyal girlfriend at university who bought me an Echo Greek bouzouki. And it was really horrendous, It was, I think, probably Romanian as well. It was built like a tank, and it didn't sound very nice. But then we had a couple of holidays together based on going to get a bouzouki, and it was completely daft turning up at a Greek luthier's workshop saying I'd like to buy a bouzouki, and he was sort of going, where are you from? Scotland.
I'm going to play with the pipes.
Yeah, and just like, no, I don't think so. But the other thing about them is they've got this sort of chocolate box. Silver lining inside them, which must add to the brightness of them, really. But they're good.
Well, the more successful you are in Athens as a Greek player, the more shit you have put on it. You have it completely covered with the Acropolis, the Parthenon, Wales, everything. It's really brilliant.
And what they do with the ribs as well. I mean, this is a classic case where that's a fake where. The ribs are actually that width with an inlay.
Are they?
Yeah, you see that they've got this a wide piece with an inlay to make it look like it's got lots of ribs, which is more expensive, but it's a sort of a trompe l'oeil on them, really. That's what we do. That's the zoukis. So that's the sort of that's the reason behind Alec being here and us playing the stuff we do. But Alec's the man. He's the legend. Anything else you want to?
I think it's probably a good place to stop.
It's a good place.
Yeah.
Well, that is that.
Put the
Push
stuff.
that.
Yeah.